Hi, this is Carrie Shell from On Point Quilter. Last week I shared with you how to draft the string pieced applique circles as shown in this quilt. This week we're going to create the setting, and I'm also going to show you some ideas for manipulating those patch draw motifs and how to use the random recolor tool to create a scrap quilt. Last week when we finished, we had drafted a 12-inch applique circle using the patch draw motif section of Electric Quilt. And now I'm going to share with you my idea for turning this into a fun play quilt for a new baby or a toddler. So I'm going to switch to work on quilt, and I'm going to do a quilt, new quilt, and I'm going to do a horizontal. Now I could have done custom set on this, but I can also do this as a horizontal. I'm going to go into my layout and I'm going to make it just one block by one block. And I decided that I wanted this fairly small after talking to some of my friends who are grandmothers. They told me, you know, a 36-inch quilt is actually an ideal size for a baby, that they're a little bit easier to, throw into that washing machine and take with and do things with. So anyway, I thought for the center of this quilt, I'm going to make it 30 by 30. And I don't have any sashing or at this point. And I'm going to deal with the borders in a bit. But I'm going to go to layer 1, and I do need to put a background color on there, and this will be the fabric that I will applique on. And I think I'm going to use an off-white of some sort. And again, I can change this later, or maybe just a light linen color. And now to place my appliques, I'm going to go to layer 2. And I'm going to use the set block, and I'm going to go to my motifs. And you know, one of the things as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing, oh, I've got all these old versions, right, that I don't really need of my quilt, but that's where I saved it in process. So before I add these to the sketchbook, I'm going to clean up my sketchbook again. And so I'm going to view my sketchbook, go to the block tab, and then go to the motifs. And I am going to go ahead, and here's the real trick. Always when you've got a lot of motifs, make sure you're on coloring 0 by 0. Now I didn't color most of these, but if you are not on 0, 0, use that scroll bar there to get to the 0, 0 and do a delete. And notice then it will delete the block and all of its colorings. Now again, not a big issue if I don't have colorings, but if you've got a lot of colorings, this will be helpful. So I've got rid of all of my bad ones. You will notice that I did create a second one that didn't have the 1/4-inch strip in it. I'm going to make some smaller circles, and didn't want something quite that intense for that. So I'm going to close that now. I'm still on the work on quilt section. I'm going to do that set block, and I'm going to just drag my block over. And notice that I'm on layer 2 when I did that. Now, if I use the adjust tool and I check that block, the block came in at 8 by 8. And that is because in my More Quilt Work Table options, when I am setting the blocks, I am saying use the block side entered below of 8 by 8. Now, if I had said use the side recorded in the block, it would have come in at 12 by 12. But just so you're aware, you can change that under the Quilt Work Table options. Now, for this particular block here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change it to 12 by 12. And I am just going to place it somewhere on the quilt. And I'm going to bring another one in. And for this one, I'm going to leave it at 8 by 8. Now I can continue to do this, so I can bring some different ones in, and notice that they're all coming in at that 8 by 8. The other thing that I can always do is use my adjust tool and do a copy and paste, and so I can do it here as well. Copy and paste. Okay, now I think I'm going to change the size of some of these, because one of the things I decided I really wanted to do was to have a lot of different sizes. So I do like that 8-inch side, so I'm going to do that there. I'm going to change this one to 6 by 6. Okay, now I don't like that all of these are going straight up and down. So I'm going to want to actually change the rotation. And the easiest way to do that, and to make sure that I'm not changing the dimensions of my circle, are to select it and use the rotate function in the precision toolbar. So I'm going to take the first one and I want to make it a -9 degrees. Now, one of the things, you're not able to type that minus in the rotation button, but if I use the arrow key and I highlight just the number 1, so the minus is still there, I change the 1 to a 9, I can do the rotation of -9 degrees. Now for this one, if it's positive, I can just highlight the 0 and do a 45-degree rotation. And this one, I did a -15. Now I decided I also wanted to play with different colors, and so I'm going to use my paintbrush tool and use the colors, and for the blue one here, and I'm going to just zoom in so I can see my item. Oh, and I'm going to just swap out a block here, because I realized I had created one with less complexity and then I forgot to use it. Now notice when I did a copy and paste, it kept that rotation, which is really nice. And I'm going to go ahead and swap out a few of the other ones as well. Maybe that one and that one. Okay, I am now ready to color. So I'm going to use my paintbrush and I'm going to zoom in on one of them. And I am going to go ahead and just go to the Colors tab and literally just pick some different colors in a particular color family here. So this is sort of from blue to maybe a little bit of purple. And I'm not going to worry so much about fabrics at this point, but just at least to get that feel of color, because when I'm actually going to piece this, I'm going to go to my scrap bin and just pull from that. Okay, once I have all of my blocks colored, I am going to add, and again, this was just done with the Color tab. I'm going to go to the libraries and go to the fabric library, and because this is going to be a scrap quilt and I want to use certain color families, I'm going to actually search by color, and I'm going to start by just let's say picking the blues. So I know I'm going to need some blues, so I'm just going to go and with my with my control key, I'm going to just select a couple of blues and add them to my sketchbook. And then I'm going to go to, let's see, like my bright blue. And I'm going to find some brights. And again, I'm sort of going into the purples a little bit here. So I'll pick a few, add them to my sketchbook. And then from my dark blues, I'm going to do the same. And I'm going to do that for each of the color families I want to bring in. So I'm adding items to my sketchbook. And now once I have a lot, and I had previously done that, so I have actually 300 fabrics at this point in different color shades that are in my sketchbook. And now what I can do is use the random recolor tool. The random recolor tool is the tool on the right that looks like a magic wand or maybe a fairy's wand. Now if you are missing it, you'll need to add it by going to the Customize toolbar. So I'm going to click on the gray arrow next to the Customize toolbar, select the Add Remove button, and in there, if you don't have it turned on, turn on the random recolor tool. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to just click in my screen to close that. And now I'm going to click on the random recolor, and all I'm going to do is click on Map to Fabrics. And I'm going to click on anywhere in my workspace here, and I'm on layer 2, and it is going to basically assign fabrics to everything. So it's a really cool way to work with colors, but then to add the fabrics. Now, if there's something I don't like that, I can certainly go ahead and change it. This one here looks a little bit too close in value, so I'm just going to go to my fabrics and at this point go ahead and just make some adjustments, right? I can pull some additional fabrics in and make it look a little bit more random at that point. And I think that gives a really nice representation. Now the key on that random recolor though is having lots of fabrics in your sketchbook to choose from, because it will pick something that is the closest in value to the color that you have done. Okay, now next step is I think this needs some borders, and I decided after looking at it maybe some strip pieced borders would also be a good idea. So I went into my border tab and I am going to change this border from a long horizontal to blocks, and I'm going to make sure my lock size adjustment that the all is clicked on. I'm going to change the first value to 4 and then click on the slider bar below it, and it's going to add the blocks all the way around. Now since I'm going to draw some strip piece blocks and I don't want to be drawing forever, I decided to go ahead and change my number of blocks horizontally and vertically to 5. Now we know that they are 4 inches from top to bottom. If I use my tape measure and check that real quick, it looks like there's 6 inches going across. So that means that would be the size that I would want to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Work on Block, and I'm going to do a block, new block, easy draw block. And I'm going to change the block to the 6-inch wide and the 4-inch height. Okay, now for snap points, because I'm going to create a strip piece and I know I'm sort of going to be in 1/4 inch increments, I'm going to take that 6 and multiply it times 4, and I'm going to have 24 horizontal. If I take my 4 and multiply it times 4, I'm going to have 16 vertical. Now I think I'm just going to turn off the graph paper because I really don't need it, and I'm just going to use the dots, right, to draw my blocks. So if I wanted a 3/4 inch finished, I would just draw there. Now make sure that the only snapping option you have on is snap to grid. And all I'm going to do is create some different size segments. The only thing I'm trying to do on this is sort of follow, make sure I have a good horizontal line. And once I've got one done, I can go ahead and color it, and I will add that to the sketchbook. And then I decided I probably could use a second one so I can alternate. So I'm going to do a block, new block, easy draw. I'm not going to change anything else here. All I'm going to do right now is just draw a block that is different than the one I did before. And again, this is very random. I'm going to go to the color tab. I'm going to try to remember the colors that I used so I don't use them again. And I'll add that to the sketchbook as well. So now when I go back to work on quilt, when I set my block, I'm going to take my first block and I am going to set it in every other space. And I'll take my second one and do it in the alternate spaces. But I still have the corners, right? So I'm going to go back to work on block, block, new block, easy draw. I'm going to make this one 4 by 4 and my snaps 16 by 16. And I'll draw my fourth block. And again, try to use some different fabrics. And add that to the sketchbook. Go back to work on quilt. And I can use the control key with this and set it in the corners. Now, along the sides, they're not rotated correctly. If I use the rotate block and I use the Alt tool on my keyboard with the rotate block, it will rotate the entire side at once. Rotate, Alt, Alt. And again, I can go back and recolor, but it gives me a very good random look as to what this quilt is going to look like. And so I can go ahead and add that to the sketchbook. Thanks so much for watching. For additional tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com. In my blog post this week, I also am going to provide some information on how to create your strip sets and show you the ones that I created.